Matt Johnson, head coach for Edison High School, and you coached Day-Day a number of years of coaching here at Edison. How would you describe this young man?
I've said it 100 times, it's in this tragic event, probably more times than ever. Pound for pound, best football player I've ever coached, pound for pound. Heart, determination with skill, perfect balance of dynamic nature. Could run the ball, punt return the ball, cover the ball, could throw a football. I mean, he was just, size did not matter to him, but if he had a 6'2", 6'3" frame, heck, he probably never would have been still here in Fresno. He would have been in an NFL training camp this time of year, which is kind of funny because, life kind of works in mysterious ways, but he had that kind of talent. It's just, it's tough to sell people on that when your size is small like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about the experience you were talking about earlier when he first came out as a sixth grader.
It was right here. It was on this field. He'd jump in and try to get in the drills with the varsity guys, messing up our tempo, our timing, but he was there, and he fully believed at that age that he could play. And shoot, by the time he was just a true freshman, Tim McDonald and I recognized that guy could help us. So the second that freshman year was over with Day-Day, it was off to varsity, and he performed. As you heard tonight, he literally took a pulling guard at that size, 5'6", 130 pounds, and knocked a pulling guard out in our opening playoff game against Sunnyside. And it just continued. Just best heart of anybody I've ever seen. You've heard that a lot, but it's the truth. The guy's all heart, all business. It's a shame. It's a shame.
And his contributions on the field were huge, but he talked about what he meant to the team off the field and just as a young man.
I think one of the speakers tonight talked about their experience playing football the first time, and there was this crazy guy running around, let's go, let's go. He was always on. He was always emotional and brought the energy. And football, a little different than baseball. His career in baseball was the same way, but he had to get himself cool and collected to throw a ball and pitch the way he did. But in football, he was without a doubt our energizer battery. He was always on, always energy, and never was negative either, by the way. In the worst times I remember we had, in games that we were down, games we lost, he was always that guy to pick people up. He was always there for us.
And I noticed in a lot of ways he was a very quiet kid, kept to himself, but also wasn't afraid to speak up when it was time to say something.
Yeah.
And I guess, do you remember any times where you saw that out of him, that he went from saying nothing to being the leader that he could be?
I think when he knew that he had done something wrong, whether it was on the field or did something that maybe was not right at school, he was very quiet then. And then he'd reflect back, and he'd always come and apologize, and then he'd get loud again. He was never one to point fingers too. And that's kind of what I remember most as far as locker room talk and on the field talk. He was always the first one to point out his negative or what he did wrong. So he wasn't pointing fingers at do this or this, do that. He'd always point at himself first, let him know he did this wrong. Now, since I can do it wrong and be corrected, you guys need to be corrected. He'd always use himself as an example, and that was what was really special. And a lot of guys don't do that. They point fingers, but they never look at themselves in the mirror. Day-Day always reflected on what he was doing right and wrong.
Yeah. What was going through, or do you remember when you heard the news about Day-Day?
Yeah. The first I heard was a text message, and it was from Brandon Simons. And then I followed up with a phone call at around 4 a.m., and that's when I got the official news that he passed. I kind of was asleep. Obviously, we played a game the night before, and Day-Day was right with me that Friday night on my sideline, talking to me, giving words of encouragement to our team. And I was just finishing up my huddle, downloading our film from the game, was kind of dozing off, and I saw that my phone had 1 million messages, which I considered typical when Edison loses. People wanted to give me their condolences, but I didn't realize it was all about Day-Day. I just kind of put it off and thought I'd get to those tomorrow. But something turned off in my head at about 4 a.m. and I looked over, and there was Brandon Simons, the great Tiger baseball coach and leader of young men, along with his head coach Cliff Rold. They had sent me messages, and that's when I found out. And then Rock Green, my assistant coach, let me know officially on the phone what had happened. And my first thoughts, my first words were, not Day-Day. I started to cry, and that's not to say I expect these kind of things to happen, but not someone like Day-Day. I've run with a lot of kids that, for whatever reason, we're into some stuff that might be dangerous. But with Day-Day, he always walked the straight line. He always did things the right way. So my initial thoughts was crying inside of my bed, not Day-Day, please not Day-Day. And that was a tough one. I've had to do this a few times at Edison in my career, and they're never easy. It's never easy.
Anything else you want to say?
Oh no, Clay, I appreciate what you guys do, and you supporting this too, and appreciate it for all the support, and the family needs it right now, so thank you.
No problem.